In recent days, dozens of elected lawmakers in France say they have received threats of violence amid a debate about whether to make a vaccination pass mandatory across the country. This proposed tightening of restrictions has seemingly caused an upsurge in anger from anti-vaccine voices. An anger that we have seen before when it comes to demonstrations against restrictions, but an anger that had until recently been calming as France continues to inoculate the vast majority of its citizens. This is an example of a threat that was sent to an MP for Emmanuel Macron's ruling En Marche party, Naïma Mouchou. You can see in this email, which she shared on Twitter, someone anonymously sending her a message saying that she is going to be shot in her house and have her head cut off. Some really shocking language there. This is another example of a threat sent to Agnès Firmin-Lebaudot, an MP with the centre-right Agir party. Here also, somebody anonymously saying to Agnès Firmin-Lebaudot that they have bought knives and are preparing to decapitate her. This kind of threats are just the latest example of what we've been seeing across Europe. Violence or threats of violence linked to misinformation and conspiracy theories about vaccines. It was as recently as last month that in neighbouring Germany, police there launched an investigation against an alleged plot to assassinate a state governor over COVID-19 restrictions. In France, the French Health Minister Olivier Véran has said that these kind of threats will be punished. And Rue, amid all of this, you're seeing messages of solidarity, such as this one on Twitter by Yael Brown-Pivet, who says, both in Parliament and online, that French MPs will not yield to the threats and that the country's democracy is at stake.
Thanks for that update, Matt. Well, for more on the debate, we're joined by our international correspondent, Annelise Bourges in Paris. Annelise, how long is this debate expected to last? And if passed, when is the law expected to take effect?
Hi there, Rule. Well, this is expected to be a lengthy debate. We could see the debate and the vote go well into Tuesday and potentially even into Wednesday. The pass is expected, if approved, of course, by the lower house of Congress and then the Senate. The pass is expected to come into effect in the second half of this month. But what we saw so far was a heated discussion. The parliamentary session started at around 3 p.m. local time here in the French capital, with the health minister speaking about the moment the country is in. Olivier Véran talked about these two fights, simultaneous fights against two waves of coronavirus infections. Of course, the Omicron variant, but also that of the Delta variant, still very much present here in this country, and defended the government's strategy here, saying that vaccination is the key element. He also said that the government's objective is not to restrict liberties and to force people into getting a jab, but to save lives. Of course, that was not the opinion of the opposition here in this country, notably the far left, Les Insoumis, the leader of that movement, took to the podium and spoke at length, accusing the government of indescribable chaos and of restricting people's liberties and forcing people into getting a job. Jean-Luc Mélenchon spoke right after Olivier Véran and said that he would file a motion against the bill, but he is very unlikely to be successful. The government of Emmanuel Macron still has a majority in the lower house of Congress, and there is a sense here in this country that this vaccine pass will indeed be approved in the lower house and then on Wednesday in the Senate.
France has seen cases exceed 200,000 in this last week. In the face of this COVID surge, Prime Minister Castex called an emergency meeting today. Could you tell us more about that?
Indeed, well, what is at stake right now is actually the very capacity for the public sector to continue to operate. With cases in the hundreds of thousands every day, we are already seeing a lot of cancellations when it comes to planes, but also trains being affected. So Jean Castex convened this emergency meeting today with 10 ministers to address multiple issues and to especially address the issues with regards to transportation, the healthcare sector, but also education. We know that school children return to the classroom today, and there is already a a sequence of measures in place that are different from the measures that we saw before. School children no longer need to isolate if one of the pupils in the classroom is tested positive. The classrooms are no longer going to close if that happens. Children will have to take a sequence of 4 tests and will continue to go to school unless, of course, their teacher is tested positive for COVID-19. We also have other measures in place, like the scrapping of isolation periods for those who are vaccinated and have come into contact with a positive case of COVID-19. So a number of more flexible rules, if you will, for people to continue to carry on with their duties. The government also insisting that it's important for people who can to work from home at least 3 times a week. That is a new rule that is already in effect today. But once again, with hundreds of thousands of people testing positive for COVID-19 every day here in this country, the challenge ahead is immense, and the next 2 weeks are going to be crucial. Health authorities here in France saying that while Omicron might not force people into hospital care, might not develop such serious conditions with people, percentage-wise, when you have hundreds of thousands of people testing positive every day, eventually that could indeed put a strain in the healthcare sector, and that is precisely what authorities are trying to avoid. So that meeting today expected to come with even more measures to be announced in the coming days with regards to how to tackle these multiple crises France is dealing right now with regards to the pandemic.